The National Library of Korea was my sanctuary. I am Lee Ji-hoon, a humble archivist. Its quiet halls and the scent of aged paper were a balm to my meticulously ordered soul. My life, both within and outside these hallowed walls, was precise, almost solitary. Routine was my bulwark against the unpredictable currents of life that had, early on, swept away my parents and left me adrift. It was a Tuesday when I first saw it. A large, unsolicited donation of miscellaneous items had arrived from a recently deceased collector. My task was to sort through the less valuable, uncatalogued pieces. As I sifted through a crate of discarded trinkets, tarnished spoons, chipped figurines, faded postcards, my fingers brushed against something unlike anything else. It was small, surprisingly heavy, and made of a wood so dark it seemed to absorb the light. A perfect, seamless cube, its surface intricately carved with swirling, abstract patterns that seemed to subtly shift as I turned it in my hands. It felt cool, almost cold to the touch, yet there was a faint, almost imperceptible vibration emanating from it, a low hum that I felt in my fingertips more than heard with my ears. There was no inscription, no mark of origin. It was an anomaly, a silent enigma. My archivist's mind, trained to categorize, found itself utterly baffled. It felt ancient, a relic from a time when the world was still raw and untamed. I spent the rest of the afternoon searching for any mention of it. Nothing. It was as if the box had materialized out of thin air. My colleague, Kim Min-jun, a jovial man with an encyclopedic knowledge of Korean history, peered over my shoulder. "Found something interesting, Ji-hoon?" he asked. "I don't know, Min-jun. Look at this." I held out the box. He took it, his brow furrowing as he examined the carvings. "Strange. What is it? A puzzle box?" he mused, trying to find an opening. "No visible seams? Remarkable craftsmanship." He handed it back to me, a faint frown on his face. "Feels odd, a bit cold." "It hums," I said, almost to myself. He looked at me, a slight, quizzical tilt to his head. "Humming? Are you sure you're not just tired, Ji-hoon?" He chuckled, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes before he shrugged it off. "Well, if you can't identify it, just put it in the unidentified artifacts section." But I couldn't. The box had a strange pull, a silent insistence. It felt important. Against my better judgment, against every protocol, I decided to take it home. Just for a night, I told myself, to examine it more closely, to understand its mystery. That night, the box sat on my coffee table, a dark, silent presence. I circled it, studied it, even tried to pry at it, but it remained stubbornly sealed. The faint hum was more noticeable now, a low thrum that seemed to resonate deep within my bones. It filled the silence of my apartment, a constant, low-frequency vibration that seemed to seep into the very air. I found myself staring at it for hours, lost in the intricate dance of its carvings. They seemed to writhe and intertwine, forming new patterns, then dissolving back into the original design. It was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. I felt a strange sense of calm, a quiet fascination. But as the hours stretched on, a subtle shift began. My meticulously organized thoughts started to drift. I found myself forgetting why I had walked into a room or misplacing my reading glasses. Stress, I told myself, but a prickle of unease began to form, a tiny seed of doubt. The box sat there, silent and still, yet I felt its presence, a subtle pressure on my consciousness. It was as if it was watching me, waiting, and for the first time in a long time, in the quiet solitude of my apartment, I felt a distinct, unsettling chill that had nothing to do with the evening air.
The next morning, the box's faint hum persisted, a low thrum beneath my awareness. I tried to dismiss it, but a strange reluctance kept me from returning it to the library. My morning routine, usually precise, felt off-key. I poured milk into my coffee before the water heated, misplaced keys, and stared blankly at my reflection, a vague sense of unfamiliarity washing over me. At the library, the familiar comfort of routine was absent. The hushed whispers and rustle of pages grated on my nerves. Min-jun, ever observant, noticed. "Rough night, Ji-hoon? You look a bit pale." "Just tired," I mumbled, taking the tea he offered. "That box, the one from yesterday, it's unsettling." He chuckled. "A box? Unsettling? You, the man who calmly catalogs ancient curses?" "It's different," I insisted, a defensive edge to my voice. "It feels alive." He raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk on his face. "Perhaps you should take a vacation, my friend." His casual dismissal felt like a subtle accusation. Throughout the day, minor incidents continued. A book I just shelved was in the wrong section. A file disappeared, then reappeared. My meticulous notes had gaps. Each instance, small on its own, chipped away at my sense of control. That evening, I returned home, the box still in my bag. I placed it back on the coffee table, and the faint hum intensified, a low, resonant thrum that filled the room. It was no longer just a vibration, it was a presence. I tried to distract myself, but my appetite was gone and words blurred on the page. The box was a magnet, subtly demanding my focus. Sleep offered no escape. The hum seeped into my dreams, twisting them into unsettling tableaus. I dreamt of endless library corridors, shelves stretching into oppressive darkness, each book whispering my name. Distorted faces with accusing eyes leered from the gloom. I woke in a cold sweat, the hum echoing in my ears, my head throbbing. Over the next few days, the disorientation grew. My apartment door was unlocked when I was certain I'd locked it. My phone would ring only to offer static or a faint sigh. I questioned my memory, my sanity. My interactions with Min-jun became strained. I snapped at him, accusing him of moving my files. He looked at me with concern and bewilderment. "Ji-hoon, are you all right? You're not yourself." "I'm fine, Min-jun," I'd retort, my voice sharper than I intended, just stressed. But the stress felt internal, a corrosive acid eating away at my composure. One evening, staring at the box, its patterns seemed to writhe. The air felt heavy. I felt an overwhelming urge to open it, but it remained sealed. Then, a new sensation, a faint whisper just at the edge of my hearing. Not coherent words, but a low murmur, like distant voices. It seemed to emanate from the box, an invitation. My heart pounded. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at my awareness. This was no longer just an artifact. It was actively engaging with me, subtly twisting my reality. I tried to rationalize it, but the whisper grew louder, weaving itself into the hum, creating a discordant symphony in my mind. A growing sense of dread, a slow burn terror, consumed me. It was the terror of losing control, of my own mind turning against me. The box, silent and still, was unraveling the carefully constructed fabric of my life. The whispers became a constant companion, a low, insidious murmur that threaded through my waking hours and invaded my dreams. They were a cacophony of indistinct voices, speaking of anxieties I hadn't known I possessed, of failures I had long buried, of fears that gnawed at my consciousness. The box, ever present, seemed to pulse with this unseen energy, its dark wood absorbing the light, casting long, shifting shadows in my apartment. My meticulous routines now felt like a desperate attempt to cling to a reality that was rapidly slipping away. My appetite vanished, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. Sleep became a battleground, plagued by vivid, terrifying nightmares of grotesque distortions and unseen hands reaching for me. My physical appearance began to reflect my internal turmoil. My eyes were sunken and shadowed, perpetually bloodshot. My skin was pallid, almost translucent. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loosely. Min-jun, bless his persistent concern, tried to intervene. "Ji-hoon, you look like a ghost," he said one morning. "Are you eating? Are you sleeping? You need to see a doctor." I flinched, pulling away. "I'm fine, Min-jun, just a bit under the weather." The lie felt like ash. I could see his concern, but also a growing frustration. He was seeing the cracks in my facade. "Under the weather, Ji-hoon. You haven't been yourself for weeks. You're snapping at everyone, making mistakes in your work. You, the most precise man I know. What's going on?" I wanted to tell him, but the words caught in my throat. How could I explain something so irrational? He would think I was mad. Perhaps I was. "It's nothing," I mumbled, turning away. "Just leave me alone." His sigh was heavy. "All right, Ji-hoon, but if you need anything..." His voice trailed off. I knew I was pushing him away, isolating myself, but the whispers seemed to encourage it, reinforcing the idea that I was better off alone. The paranoia began to fester. I started to believe Min-jun and other colleagues were talking about me, whispering behind my back. The library, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage, its silent halls echoing with unseen eyes and unheard accusations. At home, the box became the focal point of my existence. I would sit for hours, staring at it, trying to decipher the shifting patterns, to understand the source of the whispers. They were no longer just murmurs. Sometimes I could almost make out individual words, fragmented and distorted. They spoke of my deepest insecurities, my fear of loneliness, my inadequacy, the gnawing doubt that I was truly unlovable. They twisted my past, replaying moments of perceived failure, amplifying my regrets. One evening, I saw it, a fleeting image in my peripheral vision, a gaunt, shadowy figure standing in the corner of my living room, its eyes burning. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the empty corner. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a hallucination, but the image lingered. Then came the voices. Not just whispers, but distinct, albeit distorted voices, familiar, yet alien. My mother's voice, twisted into a mocking sneer. My father's voice, filled with bitter disappointment.
They spoke of my failings, of how I had let them down, of the emptiness within me. They were relentless, a constant barrage of self-recrimination and despair. I tried to fight back. I covered my ears, screamed, but the voices only grew louder. They were inside my head, burrowing deep into my consciousness, eroding my sense of self. I felt like a puppet, my thoughts no longer my own. Desperate, I tried to get rid of the box. I grabbed it, intending to throw it out. But as my fingers closed around its smooth, dark surface, a wave of profound weakness washed over me. My muscles seized, my vision blurred, and a searing pain shot through my head. I collapsed to the floor, the box clattering beside me, its hum now a deafening roar. It was resisting. When I finally regained my breath, the pain subsided. The box lay innocently on the floor, its dark surface reflecting the dim light, mocking me. I couldn't get rid of it. It was tethered to me, a parasitic twin, slowly draining my life force, feeding on my fear and despair. The realization hit me. The box wasn't just affecting my mind. It was actively manipulating my reality, blurring the lines between what was real and what was a terrifying delusion. The cracks in the mirror of my sanity were widening, and I was staring into the abyss.
The failed attempt to discard the box left me with a chilling certainty. I was trapped. It was an active entity, a silent predator. The whispers, hallucinations, paranoia, its tools to dismantle my sanity. Yet a desperate resolve formed. If I couldn't escape it, I would understand it. My archivist's instinct flickered back to life. I would research it, dissect its history, and find a way to fight back. My research began subtly. I couldn't risk drawing attention. I spent lunch breaks and evenings poring over obscure texts, forgotten journals, and digitized newspaper archives, searching for anything resembling the box or its effects. The box, hidden in a locked drawer, continued its insidious work. Whispers intensified, sometimes coalescing into clear, taunting sentences. Shadowy figures flickered in my peripheral vision. Sleep was almost non-existent. Then, a breakthrough. Sifting through digitized police reports from the early 20th century, I found a series of bizarre incidents in a rural village in Gyeonggi Province from the 1930s. Reports detailed a sudden wave of paranoia and self-destruction, with several individuals succumbing to madness. The common thread? A dark, carved wooden object passed around the village. The description was vague, but the effects chillingly familiar. One case stood out. Park So-young, a young woman who meticulously documented her descent into madness in frantic journal entries before disappearing. Her journal, digitized in the library's archives, was my next target. Reading So-young's journal was like staring into a mirror. Her elegant script grew erratic, filled with frantic crossouts. She wrote of a dark gift, a small carved box that promised insight but delivered torment. She described the faint hum, the shifting patterns, the insidious whispers that preyed on her deepest insecurities. She wrote, "It tells me they conspire against me. Menjun, my beloved, his eyes hold a lie. My mother, her kindness is a mask. They wish me ill. The box knows. It shows me the truth." The name Menjun sent a jolt of ice through me.
So-young's journal chronicled her growing isolation, her accusations, her refusal to eat or sleep. She described seeing grotesque figures, hearing ancestors condemning her. Her final entry: "The truth is too much. I must silence the whispers. I must disappear." Her story was a horrifying premonition. The box had a history, a trail of ruined lives. It wasn't just my torment, it was a pattern. I wasn't going mad alone. This was real. And if it was real, there had to be a way to stop it. My research became more focused. I found fragmented accounts in historical records, a Joseon dynasty scholar obsessed with a dark, silent cube, a wealthy merchant family whose fortune dissolved amidst paranoia after acquiring a curious wooden artifact. Each story a variation on the same theme. The item appeared and lives were systematically dismantled. I even found a cryptic reference in an old folklore text to a Jangseung's heart, a cursed object said to amplify inner demons. The description was eerily similar to my box. The text warned that the only way to break its hold was not to destroy it, but to understand its nature and confront one's own deepest fears. The box, now an oppressive weight, reacted to my discoveries. The hum grew louder, almost a roar. The whispers became a chorus, screaming my insecurities. I saw my reflection, gaunt and hollow-eyed, and the whispers mocked me. I started to see Menjun's face and shadowy figures, his eyes filled with contempt. The paranoia consumed me. I was convinced he was trying to get rid of me. One night, unable to bear the assault, I stumbled out of my apartment, driven by an irrational urge to escape. I walked aimlessly through Seoul, the city lights blurring, the whispers pursuing me. I found myself in front of the National Library, its imposing facade a silent sentinel. It was closed, but I felt drawn to it, hoping to find an answer, a weapon. The truth, I realized, was not just about the item. It was about me, about the fears it had expertly exploited. To fight it, I had to face them head on.
The library, usually a sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum. I returned to my apartment, the box waiting, its hum a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through my very bones. The whispers were a constant roar now, 1,000 voices screaming my insecurities, twisting every memory into a narrative of failure and betrayal. Minjun's face, distorted and sneering, haunted my peripheral vision. I knew I was at a precipice. The research, the historical accounts, Se-yeon's tragic journal, all pointed to psychological collapse. But the archivist in me refused to surrender. If the box fed on fear, then perhaps the only way to fight it was to starve it, to confront the very anxieties it amplified. I sat before the box, not with fear, but with a desperate, defiant resolve. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of my laptop screen displaying Se-yeon's final entry. The air was thick with the oppressive presence of the item. I could feel its tendrils reaching into my mind, probing for new vulnerabilities. "You feed on fear," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "You amplify what's already there." The whispers intensified, a chorus of mocking laughter, a cacophony of accusations. "You are alone. You are worthless. No one cares. You will die alone, forgotten. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to breathe, to focus. The Jangseung's heart. It amplified inner demons, it didn't create them. The only way to break its hold was to understand its nature and confront one's own deepest fears. My deepest fear was loneliness, the profound solitude after my parents' death. The box had latched on to this, twisting my quiet nature into isolation, my meticulousness into paranoia. It had taken Minjun, my one true friend, and turned him into an enemy in my mind. I opened my eyes, staring at the box. The patterns on its surface writhed violently. The hum was a deafening roar, a physical pressure against my eardrums. Shadowy figures solidified, grotesque caricatures of my colleagues, neighbors, even my long-dead parents, their faces contorted in disgust. "You feed on what I already believe," I said, my voice gaining strength. "You show me my own doubts, my own insecurities, but they are mine, not yours." The box seemed to recoil, its hum momentarily faltering. The figures flickered, wavering. It was a momentary reprieve. It was feeding, and I was denying it its meal. I remembered Seon's journal. She had tried to escape, but the text said the only way to break its hold is to confront one's own deepest fears. My deepest fear was loneliness. I had always built walls around myself. The box had exploited this, but Minjun, he had tried to reach out. He had shown genuine concern. The box had twisted that concern into suspicion. I reached out, my hand trembling, and placed it flat on the smooth, dark surface of the box. A jolt, like 1,000 tiny needles, shot up my arm. The hum intensified, vibrating through my entire body. The whispers became a chaotic scream, a maelstrom of fear and despair. But I held on. I focused on the real Minjun, his kind eyes, his genuine smile, his patience, his unwavering friendship, the shared laughter, the quiet understanding. "You lie," I gasped. "He cares. He always has." The box pulsed violently, dark energy radiating. Hallucinations swirled, a vortex of my deepest anxieties. I saw myself, old and frail, alone. My parents disappointed. Minjun walking away. "This is not real," I screamed. "These are my fears, not my reality." It was a battle of will. The box was a conduit, a mirror amplifying my turmoil. But by acknowledging the source of the fear, I was beginning to sever the connection. The whispers began to recede, replaced by a dull roar, then a faint hiss. The shadowy figures flickered, dissolving. The hum diminished, becoming a low thrum once more. I felt profound exhaustion, but also a strange clarity. The air felt lighter. The box, still dark, no longer radiated malevolent energy. Its power over me had diminished. I had looked into the abyss, and for the first time, I had seen my own reflection, not the distorted image the box had presented. I had confronted my fear of loneliness. The truth about the item was not that it was evil, but that it was a parasitic entity that fed on existing darkness. It was a mirror, reflecting and amplifying the fears we tried to suppress. And the only way to defeat it was to face those fears, to acknowledge them, and to choose not to be consumed. I removed my hand. The tingling lingered, but the overwhelming pressure was gone. I was still gaunt, exhausted, but the frantic light in my eyes had been replaced by a quiet, determined resolve. The battle was not over, but I had won a crucial skirmish. I had seen the truth, and it had set me free from its immediate grip. Now, I had to decide what to do with this knowledge and with the item that had nearly ruined my life.
The dawn over Seoul felt different. The oppressive weight had lifted, replaced by profound exhaustion. The box's hum was now a faint thrum, the whispers gone. My mind, once a chaotic battlefield, was now a quiet, desolate landscape, scarred but no longer under siege. I looked at the box, no longer malevolent, but a silent, dark enigma. I knew its truth. A conduit, a mirror, a parasitic amplifier. It didn't create evil. It reflected and magnified existing darkness, preying on fear and insecurity until the victim was consumed by their own amplified demons. Seo-yeon's journal, open on my laptop, was a stark reminder of the path I'd narrowly avoided. Her story, and the fragmented accounts of others, resonated with chilling clarity. So many lives ruined, not by an external force, but by an internal one, weaponized by this insidious object. The thought of Min-joon, his genuine concern twisted into suspicion in my mind, filled me with regret. I had pushed him away, accused him, all because the box had whispered lies. I needed to apologize, to explain. But how do you explain a sentient, fear-feeding wooden box? He would think I was mad. The irony was not lost on me. My body ached, but I was truly hungry for the first time in days. Each bite of my simple meal was a small victory, a reclaiming of my physical self. The box couldn't be destroyed, the old text was clear. It was a mirror, and you cannot destroy a reflection without destroying the source. Could it be contained? Neutralized? The folklore text mentioned confronting one's own fears. I had faced my fear of loneliness, severing the box's direct link to my psyche. It was no longer feeding on me, but it was still a potential threat, waiting for its next victim. I considered returning it to the library, but that felt irresponsible, too dangerous. What if it found another curious archivist or fell into the wrong hands? It was a weapon of psychological warfare. I spent the rest of the day cleaning my apartment, purging the lingering shadows. As evening approached, I sat facing the box. It no longer held the same power. I had seen its true nature, stripping it of its ability to manipulate me. My mind, now clear, formulated a plan. I couldn't destroy it, but I could contain it intellectually. I would dedicate myself to understanding it, tracing its history, finding patterns. I would become its archivist, its chronicler, its silent guardian. I would learn everything about the Jangseung's heart, not to control it, but to protect others from its insidious influence. It was a daunting, lifelong commitment, but it felt right, a purpose, a way to atone for the fear and paranoia, to honor those who had succumbed. I would not be a victim. I would be a witness, a scholar of the unseen, a silent sentinel against the darkness. The truth, I realized, was not just about the item, but about the responsibility that came with knowing it, and I was ready to bear that weight. Life in its relentless march reasserted itself. The library reclaimed its role as my sanctuary. Min-jun approached with cautious optimism. I had apologized, attributing my behavior to stress. He didn't press for details, for which I was grateful. Some truths I had learned were too heavy to share. The box remained in my apartment, on a high shelf, covered. Its hum was barely perceptible, a faint pulse I had learned to filter out. I no longer felt its insidious pull. I had faced my deepest fear, severing its direct link to my psyche. It was a victory, but a fragile one. My life, though outwardly similar, was irrevocably changed. My meticulous order now felt less like comfort, more like a fragile shield. I understood its limitations. The world I knew was far more complex, far more unsettling. Unseen forces preyed on the human spirit, amplifying its inherent darkness. My research continued with renewed purpose. I delved deeper into the Jangseung's fart, tracing its appearances through obscure texts and whispered folklore. I found more stories, more ruined lives, each a testament to the box's insidious power to exploit the cracks in the human psyche. I compiled my findings, a grim chronicle of silent suffering. I learned to recognize its subtle signs, the faint hum, the shifting patterns. I even developed a strange, almost symbiotic relationship with it. It was a dangerous knowledge, a burden I carried alone. My purpose was not to destroy it, but to understand it, to contain its influence, and to protect others from its insidious touch, even if they never knew. I sometimes wondered about its ultimate origin, a relic of an ancient curse, a manifestation of collective human fear. The folklore text hinted at the latter, a mirror reflecting the darkness within. Its existence was a chilling reminder that the greatest monsters often reside not in the shadows, but within ourselves. My quiet life continued, punctuated by introspection. I observed people more closely, seeing the subtle anxieties, the unspoken fears. I saw the potential for the box's influence everywhere. It was a terrifying perspective, a constant reminder of the fragility of the human mind. I never told anyone the full truth. How could I? The world was not ready. The item that ruined every life it touched. Its truth was not a simple narrative of good and evil, but a complex tapestry of human vulnerability and the insidious power of fear. I was a survivor, forever marked by its touch, but also perhaps forever changed for the better. I had faced my demons, and in doing so, had found a new, albeit solitary purpose. The box still sits on my shelf, covered, a silent reminder, a constant warning. And sometimes in the dead of night, I can almost feel its faint vibration, a low thrum that echoes the truth. The fight against the darkness within is never truly over. It merely waits, patiently, for its next opportunity to whisper its insidious lies.
Subscribe to be the first to get a notification when the next video drops, and hit the like button for more tales. Thank you.